Mashatile are in safe hands. This comes as Deputy President Paul Mashatile's convoy was shot at earlier this month. Masemola has confirmed there was a shooting incident. An extensive investigation is still underway, with the ballistics report already concluded. Masemola says crime intelligence is conducting its regular risk assessment on both President Ramaphosa and Deputy President Mashatile. He says members of the Presidential Protection Service are highly trained and have the necessary expertise to avert any risk and threat. Meanwhile, Deputy President Mashatile has broken his silence on the alleged assassination attempt that took place in Boksburg in the east of Johannesburg. Speaking to the media yesterday, Mashatile emphasized that decisions around the security of the President and Deputy President fall under the country's security structures, not their personal discretion.
The President and the Deputy President don't determine their security. It's an assessment that is done by the security cluster. At the moment, we are convinced that both the President and Deputy President do have adequate security. If they think that they need to beef it up, they will do so. That issue is taken care of by the state. You must have heard that the presidential protection and the police are jointly looking into the matter. They are investigating, and when they are done, they will tell us what actually happened.
Ghanaian President John Mahama has suspended the country's Supreme Court Chief Justice, a move that marks the first in the country's history. An investigation has been launched and 3 undisclosed petitions have been filed, making allegations against Gertrude Tokonu, calling for her permanent removal. Elizabeth Mapari has the details.
Chief Justices in Ghana enjoy security of tenure, meaning they can only be removed from office on a few grounds, which include incompetence and misbehavior. The content of the petitions has not been made public and she's yet to comment, while Ghana's former Attorney General has claimed her suspension is an attempt to undermine the judiciary. Tokono is Ghana's 3rd female Chief Justice and was nominated in 2023 by former President Nana Akufo-Addo. According to news agency Reuters, Tokono survived a removal request earlier this year when former President Akufo-Addo said a petition to have her dismissed had several deficiencies.
The World Food Programme has suspended malnutrition treatment for 650,000 malnourished women and children in Ethiopia this week due to severe funding shortages. The UN agency says millions more are at risk of losing access to aid. WFP gets financing from 15 to 20 donors, including the United States, but many of them have cut funding this year. The agency has received exemptions from US President Donald Trump's aid freeze that has disrupted humanitarian work around the world. More than 10 million people in Ethiopia are gravely short of food, including 3 million displaced by conflict and extreme weather conditions, as well as refugees from war-torn neighboring Sudan. And finally, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the United States President Donald Trump will join world leaders and thousands of mourners who will attend the funeral of Pope Francis at St. Peter's Square in Vatican City on Saturday. The Pope died on Monday at the age of 88. Sherwin Bryce Peace has the story.
President Trump took to social media to confirm his and First Lady Melania Trump's attendance at the funeral of the late pontiff, writing that they looked forward to being there. Trump earlier ordered flags at government buildings and military posts around the world to be flown at half-staff until sunset on the day of the late Pope's burial. In addition to the UN Secretary-General, British Prime Minister, and the presidents of Ukraine, France, Argentina, Brazil, and the European Union Commission have all indicated that they will be in attendance at Saturday's memorial.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulongwebe.
Headline. In our sports headlines this hour, the coach of South Africa's national under-20 football men's team is confident that his charges will be ready for the AFCON in Egypt later this month. And 4-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka has crashed out of the Madrid Open in the first round at the expense of Lucia Bronzetti. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
SABC News. the African perspective. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Thank you to Jalani Tulongwepe and Figilin Wati with our sports and news update. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406-9126 #Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
The coffin carrying the body of Pope Francis has arrived at St. Peter's Basilica ahead of his funeral on Saturday. After the blessing at the Casa Santa Marta's chapel, the casket was accompanied by cardinals as it was carried through St. Peter's Square, where worshippers applauded the late Pope. Francis died on Monday at the age of 88. The general public will be allowed to visit the late pontiff until 7 o'clock in the evening on Friday. South Africa's emeritus pastor of the Apostolic Faith Mission, Reverend Frank Chikane, says Pope Francis will be remembered for speaking out when the church was quiet about the death arising from the Gaza-Israel war. Chikane says Pope Francis was even reached a stage where he called what was happening in Gaza a genocide. In 2023, Pope Francis also visited the war-torn country of South Sudan. Sisi Sikhalo has more.
Condolences have been pouring in since the passing of Pope Francis on Monday. Emeritus pastor of the Apostolic Faith Mission in South Africa, Reverend Frank Chikane, also passed his condolences. Talking about Pope Francis, he described him as being unique and having showed that uniqueness from the onset of his journey as a pope. Chikane adds Pope Francis also showed total commitment to the cause of justice. Chikane says what stood out for him was him speaking about the Gaza-Israel war.
When the church was quiet about Gaza and the people in Gaza were dying almost like 100 per day, and now we're talking about thousands. He acted as a pastor because his own members of the church were being affected, the schools were bombed. You know, Catholics have got facilities like schools, hospitals, etc. were bombed, and he spoke critically about it. But later he reached a stage where he himself concluded this is genocide, and there are many churches that have not reached that particular stage.
Catholics at Rosebank Catholic Church in the city of Johannesburg will remember Pope Francis as someone who fought for the poor and vulnerable in society and also called for peace. Some members of the church had this to say.
For me, Pope Francis was one of the most modern popes I've known. He was very knowledgeable, but also so human. And I followed his teachings. I bought his book on creation, Laudato Si, and he was very special pope. Well, he always talked peace. He told us to pray for the war-torn areas at the end of every homily that he ever gave.
He was always for the people that are most vulnerable in society. And I think he looked at things from a different perspective, perhaps more in tune with what is happening in the modern world. And I think he's taught us.
And that report by Sisi Sikhalo. It is 11 after 12 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has suspended Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu after a preliminary investigation found sufficient grounds for an inquiry into her conduct. The decision follows 3 petitions calling for her removal and was made in consultation with the Council of State in accordance with the 1992 Constitution. And to unpack this further, we have on the line Professor Michael Pesa White from the State Interest and Governance Authority in Ghana. Prof, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
From where you are, and thanks for having me.
Great.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, great stuff. We can hear you clearly. Now, Prof, what exactly led to the suspension of the Chief Justice?
So, I think that is, in terms of the substance of the case, is yet to be known. But what we do know, as per the process or the procedure, is that once a petition is received by the president consults with the Council of State. The Council of State then activates its judicial committee to look into the matters in the petition, which in this case they did. And the Council of State then had indicated that there was a prima facie case made in those petitions. Now, the logical step for the president, therefore, to carry the petitions forward is to then ask the Chief Justice to step aside whilst the matter is looked into more thoroughly by a committee set up by the president. And so at this point in time, it doesn't suggest that the Chief Justice is being accused of any wrongdoing, but to honor the dictates or the processes of the Constitution, the president has activated those provisions to ensure that the constitutional dictates are adhered to.
But it still doesn't say, or it still doesn't let or bring the citizens into the president's decision with regards to this as to exactly what grounds do they have to start running with this process without the public knowing what the issues are.
So that is how the Constitution itself sets up the process. The process is not set up to throw whatever allegations or accusations being leveled against, in this case, the Chief Justice, into the open. The process is expected to protect the dignity of the office until the Chief Justice had the opportunity to meet the committee that has now been set up to look into the issues raised in the petition. Following from that, then it will be clear whether the public will be let into the specific issues that the petitions have highlighted. Of course, there are a number of issues that are flying all over the place.
Can you please mention some of those issues, Professor?
The veracity of those things are yet to be determined, and I'm sure they will be determined either confirmed or otherwise when the Chief Justice is confronted with some of these issues. Some has to do with the use of public funds for purposes not prescribed in law. Some has to do with what one will call abuse of discretionary powers and so on and so forth. But like I said, we are yet to know the full detail of the weight of the issues in the petition.
Now, during this process, what happens to the cases that she was presiding over?
So an acting Chief Justice has been appointed, which is one of the justices of the Supreme Court, has been asked to step in and be acting. And so this Chief Justice takes over and basically supervises the cases that have already been in place until the process is over.
Can she appeal the suspension, or does she have to wait until the investigation against her is concluded?
She has to wait because you have the opportunity to answer whatever questions or whatever issues are raised in the petition. And when that is done, a report will be submitted to the president and a final determination as to whether she comes back from suspension, recalled from suspension to continue work, or she proceeds to be given the sack. then, of course, at that point, I believe that if she has any issues, she can raise them at the appropriate forum.
And how long does a process like this take? How long does an inquiry take?
So this is the first time that we are having, especially under the 1992 Constitution, that we are having to deal with a Chief Justice on this. However, there were other constitutional bodies where the heads of those institutions, like the Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice a few years ago, was taken through the same process. And it didn't take that long at all. I think in a matter of 3 weeks, 2 weeks, thereabout, the committee is expected to wind up and then present a report, after which the president is expected to take a decision.
Has there been any reaction from the citizens of the country as to what's taking place?
Well, I think there is a general discussion on the social media and then also on radio and TV. I have seen an opinion poll results published by the Global Info Analytics with sampling from across the country, region by region, asking people whether they think that the Chief Justice whether they think the Chief Justice should be removed. And surprisingly, I think the result shows that about 52% of Ghanaians sampled actually were indicating that they wanted the Chief Justice removed. And of the 16 regions, only 2 regions do you have a marginal majority saying that they don't think so. But 14 of the regions, majority of people sampled in all those regions suggest that they really want the Chief Justice to go.
Just for interest's sake, I'm reading verbatim here where the Chief Justice, Tokono, survived a removal, which was requested by this year when President Nana Akufo-Addo said a petition to have her removed from the bench had several deficiencies, so just reading verbatim and trying to understand. Now, this is not the first time this has happened, but now it's actually in place. This inquiry is now underway. What were the issues back then? And for Nana Akufo-Addo as president to having said that the several deficiencies didn't allow for the process to continue, what is different now?
Well, it's difficult to tell what is the issues then were and what the issues now are. But what is obvious is that it doesn't look like the thoroughness with which the process is being followed now was the case at the time. I think this time around, what we are seeing is that the petitions were received, the president made sure that the public is informed, made sure that the contents of the petition are not made public as required, forwarded to the Chief Justice, give her the opportunity to provide her responses, and then, of course, also forwarded it to the Council of State for a consultation. The Council of State gives the president a feedback, and then, based on the feedback, the president had taken the first initial decision of putting in place a committee, suspending the Chief Justice, and, of course, also appointing an acting Chief Justice. We didn't see this, in the case of Nana Akufo-Addo. We just saw that once the petition was submitted, perhaps whatever process they used, I'm not in a position to tell, but what we knew was that they just came back and said the petition had several deficiencies. So I'm not really in a position to say whether the content of that petition is the same as the content of this one. But what I do know is that there was a petition then, and it was literally dismissed by the president at the time. There is a petition now, and the president now decide that the law or the processes as outlined by the Constitution must be followed to their logical conclusion.
And who is the acting Chief Justice that has been appointed? All right, we seem to have lost that connection to Professor Michael Kpesa White from the State Interest and Governance Authority in Ghana, speaking to us on the line with regards to the President, John Dramani Mahama, suspending the Chief Justice, Gertrude Tokonu, after a preliminary investigation found sufficient grounds for an inquiry into her conduct. It is 21 after 12 Central African Time.
ritmos e cultura com o embaixador da música africana e lusófona, Jacob Wakantivani.
Mombali nanga kasongo mbona wewe songa libala mbona wewe mombali nanga
Tem sentido tanto a sua falta e dos ritmos de cultura onde você esteve, meu querido embaixador.
É 2025 e o embaixador da música africana e lusófona, Jacob Wakantivani, traz todas as entrevistas com os músicos africanos e lusófonos para a melhor dança, entrevistas e entretenimento. Não perca! Todos os domingos, das 20 às 21 horas de Johannesburg, aqui no Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It is 12:22 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Members of the South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU, have braved the rainy weather, marching to the office of the National Treasury, Department of Basic Education and the Department of Higher Education and Training in the country's capital, Pretoria. The union says the march is in protest against the austerity measures that are undermining public service delivery, particularly in education, and threatening the constitutional right to quality education, especially for children from poor and working class backgrounds. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by Channel Africa's reporter, Sisi Sikhalo. Sisi, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Now, Sisi, tell us exactly what's happening currently and just unpack for us, who is expected to receive the memoranda and what's the way forward?
Lulu, I can tell you, I don't know if you can see in the background, thousands. I can safely perhaps say over 10,000 members are here marching to three government departments, which is National Treasury, the Department of Basic Education, and the Department of Higher Education and Training. Basically, what we are saying is that the austerity measures that are there, they are undermining the education system in the country. They are speaking about, you will remember that in the Western Cape Province, there are over 2,400 posts that have been frozen. And in other provinces across the country, they haven't been able to employ the teachers. So basically, that is the issue, mainly the austerity measures that are in place. They are saying as the union that it shouldn't affect education, because when you touch education, you are touching the social standing of society, you are touching the economic standing of the country. So yeah, basically this is what is happening. Members chanting. We have just arrived a few minutes ago at the first department, which is the Department of Basic Education, and after that we'll then proceed to the other two government departments.
Sisi, have you had a chance to speak to some of the members who are there and, just to find out exactly what other concerns they have that they need assistance with?
We have been able to speak to the leaders of the organization, which is SATU itself, and the mother, the trade union, which is SATU, which is represented by its president, Nicholas. So they are saying that, the infrastructure in schools, in rural areas, there are still infiltration, which is a danger to the children and to the well-being of the teachers as well. And they also spoke about the salary of the educators, that is not enough compared to other professions. So we spoke to the leadership of SATU and the leadership of SATU. And basically, the main thing is the austerity measures. They are saying you can cut money from other departments that are not so significant and leave education alone.
And with regards to now these austerity measures that are being brought to the fore in terms of their disagreements with them, what are they hoping will come out from this? What are they hoping that Treasury will do, as well as basic education and the higher education departments?
I beg your pardon, Lulu, I didn't get that question.
I'm trying to find out from you that what is the way forward? Say the departments, all these departments don't make any changes or don't agree to some of these changes that are being called for. What happens then? What is their next plan of action?
For now, SADC is saying that this is the first engagement. They are giving those departments 21 days. They are going to be engaging with them, and they are giving them 21 days to engage and to talk about this. But failure to hit to their call, which was the march today, they will then proceed to go for a strike, full-blown strike.
And in terms of a full-blown strike, is this across from the basic education to higher education, and what exactly does that mean?
Well, they did not specify what it will entail. All they could say is that they are giving this process a chance, but they still want to engage. So then they will proceed. If 21 days goes by without them getting, joy in their demands, then they will go to a strike. But they are saying, for now, let's give this process a chance of engaging. And then if we don't get joy, then we'll go beyond just the march.
Oh, Sisi, thank you for joining us on Africa Update. We'll leave it there for today.
Thank you, Lulu.
That's Channel Africa's reporter, Sisi Sikhalo, joining us from the scene of the march by the teacher union SATU in South Africa. It is 28 after 12 Central African time.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter?
Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard?
Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126.
And we will call you back.
So you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age, I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am,
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views.
Share your opinion.
Engage with a community that values your perspective.
Follow us on our social media.
Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za
and get ready to share your views
on Channel Africa,
the African perspective. Have you been struggling to find Channel Africa?
Oh yes, where can I find you guys?
Well, you are in luck.
Warning, radioactive zone detected. Please enter.
Listen to the African perspective on our brand new SABC Plus app.
Download the fresh and easy to use app
from sabcplus.com or the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Or just command your phone to find SABC Plus on your phone
and check out all this good stuff.
And that's where you will find Channel Africa, the African perspective. Oh yes,
this is fresh and easy.
Africa Update
on Channel Africa.
It is 29 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763. That's 406-9126. Hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. Our news headlines up next with Jolani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines.
The African perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good afternoon. Making headlines, South Africa's National Police Commissioner General Fani Masemola has assured the nation that President Cyril Ramaphosa and Deputy President Paul Mashatile are in safe hands. This comes as Deputy President Mashatile's convoy was shot at earlier this month. Ghanaian President John Mahama has suspended the country's Supreme Court Chief Justice, a move that marks a first in the country's history. And finally, the World Food Programme has suspended malnutrition treatment treatment for 650,000 malnourished women and children in Ethiopia this week due to severe funding shortages. The UN agency says millions more are at risk of losing access to aid. I will have details on these and other stories at 1 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Jalani. We say good afternoon to Figile Lingwati with our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good afternoon, Lulu. We kick off with football news. The coach of South Africa's under-20 national football team, Raymond Mdaga, is confident that the team is ready for the under-20 Africa Cup of Nations as they head to Egypt tonight. Mdaga's squad, minus some of the players who have either not been released by their clubs or will join the team later this week in Egypt, beat Sekhukhune United ABC Municipal League team 5-0 on Tuesday. Mdaga revealed that they would have loved to play against a team also playing at this AFCON, but says they are still fine with their preparations.
You know, as a coach, you must know you're always on your toes. And the technical team and the boys know that when things change, you really and immediately adjust. In the initial preparation, we were supposed to play Congo before they also changed because it also affected them. To say the tournament now is no more in Ivory Coast, it's in Egypt, so we can't be able to play the match. We would have loved to have an extra match. Hence, even the match that we're playing, we wanted like a team that is, in the look of things, is in a better level compared to the boys.
A dream for an all-South African CAF Champions League final is still alive as Mamelodi Sundowns and Orlando Pirates ready themselves for the semi-final second legs in Cairo, Egypt. Both Sundowns and Pirates played to a goalless draw against Al Ahly and Pyramids FC at home over the weekend. Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso believes the Brazilians can beat them despite playing in their own backyard.
Of course, I know that Sundowns already won to Ahly several times. I know everything. And I still believe that we can beat them because we didn't lose with them. So there's a lot to be played still and a lot of belief and capacity to be put it on the pitch.
Despite not having lost a single game in their last 7 head-to-head encounters since 2021, Miguel Cardoso says they respect Al Ahly for what they achieved in recent years.
You should be respectful when you speak about who you have ahead of you, because we are speaking about a team that last 5 years played 5 finals. In 2021, they beat the Kaiser Chiefs 3-0 in the final.
And tennis news, 4-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka crashed out of the Madrid Open in the first round on Tuesday with a 6-4, 2-6, 6-4 defeat by Lucia Bronzetti. The Japanese former world number 1, ranked 55th, battled back with a strong second set after losing the first, but eventually came up short against her determined Italian opponent. Osaka, who is still finding form after a 15-month break from tennis and last played at the Miami Open in March, secured 2 break points in the 4th game of the first set, which she spurned. Bronzetti broke in the 7th and served it out before Osaka responded strongly. 27-year-old secured 3 breaks of serve and conceded 1 to force a decider. Osaka immediately conceded a break and despite wrestling back on serve at 3-all, when she took her first break point of the game, was broken herself again straight away. The Italian now will face American world number 5th, Madison Keys, in the second round. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126. And we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age, I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So yeah, that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk, it's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with a community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Up next is Nosipo Zuma with our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good afternoon. In your business news this hour, South African Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago says the G20 must decide which issues to prioritize and establish better processes to reclaim its impact. Kganyago delivered the keynote address at an event in Washington on the sidelines for the 2025 spring meetings of the World Bank and the International Fund. He says the G20 must find relevance beyond crisis.
When we say, for instance, that the G20's relevance is fading, I think we mean that the agenda, always rich in topics, is overloaded and too complex. While there are many agenda items suitable for recent technocratic discussions, such as improving payment systems or helping heavily indebted poor countries, the G20 cannot effectively address itself to all of them.
Stock markets are enjoying a much-needed relief rally in Asia today after U.S. President Donald Trump said he had no plans to fire the head of the Federal Reserve and hinted at lower tariffs for China. The dollar jumped sharply across the board after Trump walked back the threats to dismiss Fed Chair Jerome Powell that had badly shaken investor confidence in the U.S. Assets, although those gains faded somewhat as the day progressed. South Africa's headline consumer inflation fell more sharply than expected in March to 2.7% year-on-year from 3.2% in February. Economists polled had forecast annual inflation would slow to 2.9%, just below the bottom of the South African Reserve Bank's 3% to 6% target. The central bank last month left its main lending rate unchanged after 3 consecutive rate cuts, citing risk stemming from U.S. President Donald Trump's global war and the country's disputed national budget. South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile is today expected to deliver a keynote address at a roundtable discussion on the 2025-2026 budget tabling, including the adoption of the fiscal framework and revenue proposals. The gathering, to be hosted by the Financial and Fiscal Commission, will be held in Cape Town under the theme Charting Fiscal Pathways, Collaborative Action for Equitable Growth and FFC Recommendation. The gathering will be attended by policymakers, business, civil society and organized labor, among others. The fiscal framework implementation is expected to start by the 1st of next month. And finally, the International Monetary Fund has reported that the U.S. economy will experience slower economic growth and higher prices, in part due to U.S. President Donald Trump's global tariffs. The organization also predicted UK inflation would be the highest in the world's advanced economies this year at 3.1%, largely due to higher bills, including for energy and water. Growth in the U.S. is now expected to be 1.8% this year, down from the IMF's estimate of 2.7% for the US in January. The BBC's Michael Fleury has the details.
In a sobering report, the International Monetary Fund warned that the decision to raise tariffs to levels exceeding the highs reached during the Great Recession marked the start of a new era, one that would slow global growth and hit the world's largest economy hardest. The IMF slashed its US growth forecast by nearly 1% in its quarterly report on the outlook for the global economy, adding that inflation would also be higher. The Chinese economy is likely to suffer from higher tariffs too, although to a lesser degree.
Your financial indicators: one US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 603. In Botswana, it's 13 plus 60. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 88, and in Zambia, it's 28 kwacha 43. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 77. Russia is 81 rubles 30. India is 85 rupees 16. China at 7 yuan 31, and in South Africa, $1 is trading at 18 rand 62. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,455 and platinum at $966 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $67.14 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nusi Pozuma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you to Nosipho Zuma with our business news. It is 12:42 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to arrive in South Africa this Thursday for a working visit. He will meet with South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. This visit comes as Zelensky faces increasing pressure to agree to tough terms for a peace deal with Russia proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump's negotiators, terms which would require Ukraine to permanently cede Crimea and abandon its ambitions to join NATO. It remains to be seen whether South Africa will be able to facilitate a peace agreement between the two warring nations. Our political analysts have shared their thoughts on Zelensky's upcoming visit to South Africa, and Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe has more on the story.
Relations between South Africa and Ukraine were tense because of South Africa's close ties to Russia, and in particular its refusal to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but history has moved on. Now South Africa finds itself, if anything, closer to Zelensky than the US is. Trump, meanwhile, has blamed Zelensky for starting the war with Russia and is trying to push him into a peace deal with Russia, which would require hard concessions by Ukraine. Here is political analyst Kwezi Ngcebisa on Zelensky's visit.
The visit by President Zelensky to South Africa should be considered as an important development in the ongoing efforts by South Africa and the African continent to communicate its suggestions and availability to play a role in building confidence between Russia and Ukraine in light of the ongoing conflict and war in that particular part of the world.
In mid-June 2023, a team of 7 African presidents of, among others, Egypt, South Africa, Uganda and Zambia visited Ukraine and Russia. With South Africa as a leading economy in Africa, its President Cyril Ramaphosa obtained the mandate to lead the initiative to attempt to make peace in the ongoing conflict, which proved fruitless.
The background that we must keep in mind is the fact that the African mission that went to Ukraine and Russia never got much traction in providing solutions or being taken seriously. The conflict in that part of the world, in all honesty, has been overly subscribed by a number of geostrategic actors seeking to find a solution or impose a preferred outcome. This has not worked.
Ngcebisa says this is an opportune time for South Africa to pursue the African peace mission.
And this is an opportunity for South Africa to continue in the mode that the African Peace Mission had sought to introduce to finding a solution, which was building confidence between Ukraine and Russia, and at the same time maintaining or insisting on the maintenance of the minimum standards of conducting war, which of course, as we all know, had impacted negatively on global supply chains.
But to those who might wonder who is Volodymyr Zelensky, international relations expert and political analyst Dr. Shingai Mutizwa Mangiza factors in with Zelensky's biography.
Vladimir Alexandrovich Zelensky was born in January 1978 to Jewish parents. His father is a professor of computer science, whilst his mother is retired in Geneva. Zelensky, a native Russian speaker, grew up in the Kryvyi Rih, a major city of the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast region in central Ukraine. His great-grandparents were victims of the Holocaust. Although Zelensky studied law, he never practiced, instead opting to go into comedy by joining a comedy troupe. He, however, would go on to establish his own production company, which would produce a wide range of programs. Most of his programs were dubbed in the Russian language, with a few programs dubbed in the Ukrainian vernacular.
How did he transform from being a comedian to a politician? Shingai gives the accounts.
His most famous program, Servant of the People, is a comedy program where he famously played the role of a fictional Ukrainian president between 2015 and 2019. Zelensky would go on to reprise this role in a very real capacity when he was elected as president of Ukraine in 2019, succeeding Petro Poroshenko. Although Zelensky had initially denied he was venturing into politics, speculation was rife following the registration of a new political party called Servant of the People in March 2018 by members of Zelensky's own production company, the Kvartal 95.
Dr. Shingai also gives a description of his ascendancy to the highest office.
He won the election with 73.23% of the vote in the second round, defeating Poroshenko in what has been described as the biggest landslide in the history of Ukrainian presidential elections. Following his victory at the polls, Zelensky sought to introduce a series of reforms around the electoral system as well as the referendum system. Most observers of Ukraine have cited his resilience and steadfast nature in the face of adversity and aggression. Zelensky has been credited with not only ensuring the survival of the Ukrainian state, but also ensuring the survival of the processes.
He then highlights some of the successful milestones by Zelensky at the helm.
Amongst his achievements as president had been to introduce legislation that stripped away the immunity of lawmakers. Another one of his major efforts or achievements was in his ability to limit the influence of what were dubbed as Russian-friendly oligarchs. He did so by nationalizing firms linked to Russian-friendly oligarchs, as well as opening the media space and in the process diminishing the influence of the oligarchs to that extent.
It's all eyes on South Africa on Thursday as the world awaits to see if South Africa will broker an African peace deal in the Ukraine and Russia war. Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Today is World Book Day, also known as World Book and Copyright Day or International Day of the Book. It is an annual event organized by UNESCO to promote reading, publishing, and copyright. The day is also important in countries such as South Africa, who faces a literacy crisis with grade 4 learners struggling to read for meaning. And joining us on the line to speak to us about the importance of World Book Day is Dr. Mimi Dupré, a senior lecturer and medical specialist at the Department of Pediatrics and Child Health at Stellenbosch University. Dr. Dupré, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good morning, Lulu, and all the listeners. Thank you for having me.
Now, how important is such a day as World Book Day?
Yeah, so I think to be on more the light-sided side of reading, I mean, reading provides entertainment and it sparks joy. It's a great stress reliever and it's a gateway to different worlds. Why only live one life if you can live thousands of lives through books? But in South Africa, of course, we are having a crisis with our literacy studies, with our grade 4 learners that have been found only to have 81% of them that could not read for meaning. So the important thing at school is the first 3 years is actually children learn to read, but thereafter you need to be able to read to learn. So for us it's an absolutely crisis and books are crucial for learning and intellectual growth.
Speaking of this crisis of grade 4 learners who are struggling to read for meaning, What I'd like to know, because we keep talking about this, and I think we need understanding as to which grade 4 learners. Are we talking grade 4 learners during the COVID era and the post-COVID era? Where exactly are these grade 4 learners that we're speaking of? Are they in grade 4 currently, or have they moved up to other grades? Because I think this is very important. I think there's a bit of a disconnect when we speak of this, and we just need clarity on it.
Yeah, so COVID really caused a lot of harm to our reading to meaning. Our reading for meaning has always been poor. So before COVID, it was 78% of readers that could not read for meaning, which means there's really very few that are ready to move on. But this specific progress report was the 2021 one that found that 81%. So these learners were at the start of grade 4 in 2021. So they have moved on. But unfortunately, South Africa's reading for meaning, and of course it's got numerous, there's really a very big background of inequality in that's behind it. But we did rank last out of 43 participating countries in this specific 2021 reading for meaning study.
And how do we get it right? How do we improve, our percentage when it comes to, grade 4s and other grades as well, reading for understanding and meaning? How do we change that statistics?
Yeah, so I've got a few ideas that I would love to share with you, but I do think what we all have to realize is that if you place a child in grade R or in grade 1 and they have never been exposed to books, then you've set that child up for failure. And the sad reality in South Africa is that more than 51% of our children going to grade 1 do not have a single recreational book at home. So book sharing or the availability of books makes a vast difference in children's preparedness for school. So they've actually shown that even just putting one book into the home of a child at 9 months can give them a double the chance to be untracked when they are 4 and 5 years old. So I think in South Africa, where a lot of families do not even have food security, to tell parents to buy books for their children is a little bit disputed. I mean, you can't expect people to spend money at books. So I do think people have to use libraries. For a fact, I know that the Western Cape have amazing libraries, and it's free for all parents to take their children to the library, and they can actually use books. I think we have to have a national program to promote shared reading, to really get books into the hands of parents and into households so that at least they can expose their children to books. And the amazing thing is it doesn't even have to be print books. Even wordless books have been shown to be great in letting parents engage and nurture the children around books. So when we talk about shared book sharing, it's actually not really the reading. It's asking the questions, what, where, why, and playing around the books. So it can play a crucial role in our country to actually help with all the inequality and prepare children better for their school years.
And now, on the lighter side, today is World Book Day, and what should, especially children, what is out there? Because I think in our era, we used to read the Enid Blytons and so on. So what are young children reading today that will excite them and get them interested in more reading for pleasure?
So I think reading has to be started already before 1 year of age. And children absolutely love books, and it really nurtures more than reading. It nurtures relationships and teaches empathy. But for young children, then really these lift and look books are great. The spot books are great, and there's actually a vast array out there. There's also touch and feel books, and even some smell books. All of these, unfortunately, are a little bit at the high-end market. But there's some organizations, some non-profit organizations in South Africa, like Book Dash and Nalibali, that's been really great in putting children's books and culturally appropriately books into the hands of parents. So I want to encourage all parents actually to look out for these organizations that distribute their books. I think Harry Potter will always be a favorite. Richard Scarry, Dr. Zeer's books, all of them really are amazing books, and they spark joy, what shared reading is actually supposed to be about.
Well, Dr. du Preez, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Please read to your children.
Most definitely.
Thank you.
That's Dr. Mimi du Preez, a senior lecturer and medical specialist at the Department of Pediatrics and Child Health at Stellenbosch University, joining us on the line. It is 12:56 Central African time, and we say happy Wet Wednesday to Miss Tammy. Listen to this. Tammy, she must be thinking about me. It's Nompumelelo Ngubeni of the Upside team. So do you read to your daughter?
We're just both Ngubenis.
I know.
No, completely different people.
I know.
Hi,
yes,
Lulu.
hi. It's World Book Day. So do you read?
Yeah, I heard doctor say read to your children.
Yes.
Just yesterday, my daughter was imploring me to read to her, and just because she was having a difficult time falling asleep, and I said, listen. I think that should tell you.
Yeah, I know. So what's coming up today on the Upside?
All right, so tomorrow is the start of SA Fashion Week. Yes. It comes at the back of New York Fashion Week, Milan Fashion Week, where they were showcasing their spring-summer 2025 collections. We're going to be doing the same here. So you would think because we're entering autumn-winter, now winter, given the weather outside, you'd think that we'd also be showcasing our winter, but no, we kind of still, do what the Europeans are doing and Americans are doing. So it's the start of that tomorrow. We'll speak to the CEO of the South African Fashion Week. We're also going to be speaking, about... Because I'm talking at the top of my head.
Yes.
Travel on the continent. So intra-African travel. It is so highly priced, right?
Yes.
Because for some reason it's geared at international, and I mean international American, European travelers, that it makes it unaffordable for us to travel.
Yes.
We'll be speaking to the owner of a travel agency about why it is that, they are making it so difficult for us to travel. And then looking also at visa applications, some countries relaxing their visa application processes in order to stimulate continental travel. What caught your eye? Very interesting. What do you think about celebrities? Do you think that they have a duty to be role models?
I guess they kind of made a choice to be in the spotlight.
Yeah.
And it comes with the territory, because we need to be honest. Young people look up to celebrities. And it's very important that they also take that into cognizance as being celebrities. That, you know what, there could be some young child who's looking up to you, and you cannot be found in compromising situations
Okay, we've had celebrities speak up of late. One, Nadia Nakai, has spoken up about her dress code, people calling her out on the lack of clothing, and she said, no, you raise your own children. It's not my responsibility to model anything for them. So we're going to be touching on something similar.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. Coming up on the upside at the top of the hour with Nompumelelo Ngubeni and Tebogo Likuleni. And for myself, Lulu Gaboo, and the Africa Update team, it's been a good one. That's our producer, Tracy Bimgard, technical operator, Tato Maporoma, and social media, Nzako Mashaba. Goodbye from us, and we'll do this again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good afternoon. South Africa's National Police Commissioner General Fani Masemola has assured the nation that President Cyril Ramaphosa and Deputy President Paul Mashatile are in safe hands. This comes as Deputy President Paul Mashatile's convoy was shot at earlier this month. Masemola has confirmed there was a shooting incident and an extensive investigation is still underway, with the ballistics report already concluded. Masemola says crime intelligence is conducting its regular risk assessment on both President Ramaphosa and President Deputy President Mashatile. He says members of the Presidential Protection Service are highly trained and have the necessary expertise to avert any risk and threat. Meanwhile, Deputy President Mashatile has broken his silence on the alleged assassination attempt that took place in Boksburg in the east of Johannesburg. Speaking to the media yesterday, Mashatile emphasized that decisions around the security of the president and deputy president fall under the country's security structures and not their personal discretion.
The president and the deputy president don't determine their security. It's an assessment that is done by the security cluster. At the moment, we are convinced that both the president and deputy president do have adequate security. If they think that they need to beef it up, they will do so. That issue is taken care of by the state. You must have heard that the presidential protection and the police are jointly looking into the matter. They are investigating, and when they are done, they will tell us what actually happened.
Ghanaian President John Mahama has suspended the country's Supreme Court Chief Justice, a move that marks a first in the country's history. An investigation has been launched and 3 undisclosed petitions have been filed, making allegations against Gertrude Tokonu, calling for her permanent removal. Elizabeth Mapari has the story.
Chief Justices in Ghana enjoy security of tenure, meaning they can only be removed from office on a few grounds, which include incompetence and misbehavior. The content of the petitions has not been made public and she's yet to comment, while Ghana's former Attorney General has claimed her suspension is an attempt to undermine the judiciary. Tokono is Ghana's 3rd female Chief Justice and was nominated in 2023 by former President Nana Akufo-Addo. According to news agency Reuters, Tokono survived a removal request earlier this year when former President Akufo-Addo said a petition to have her dismissed had several deficiencies.
The World Food Programme has suspended malnutrition treatment for 650,000 malnourished women and children in Ethiopia this week due to severe funding shortages. The UN agency says millions more are at risk of losing access to aid. WFP gets financing from 15 to 20 donors, including 3 million displaced by conflict and extreme weather conditions, as well as refugees from war-torn neighbouring Sudan. And finally, the US health authorities say the use of synthetic dyes in food will be banned from the end of next year. The commissioner, for which food companies dispute, the dyes are used in breakfast cereals, confectionery and beverages. Makare advocated for the use of natural ingredients.
For companies that are currently using petroleum-based red dye, try watermelon juice or beet juice. For companies currently combining petroleum-based yellow chemical and red dyes together, try carrot juice.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulongwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.